Have you ever wondered what it's like to have enough shares in Tesla that it makes you lose some sleep sometimes? I have. What a nice thing that would be. So today we're going to have an interview with someone who has more than that many shares. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. This is José Calviño. He's an interesting guy. I met him before Texas. I met him in Texas. And now he's here to share some nuggets of wisdom. Jose, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. The weather is improving. I have nothing to complain about, at least no legitimate complaints, which has never stopped me before. So, real quick, why don't you tell us a bit about your background, what you did, professionally, and up until, the whole Tesla thing got started.
Yeah. It could be a long story, but I did 30 years, basically, 29 and some odd months in the semiconductor industry. Working for companies like Analog Devices, AMD I contracted with IBM. Analog Devices they're from like 1965. Very long, a lot of longevity in the semiconductor industry. They're on the analog side, so you don't hear a whole lot about them. But started my career at Harris Corporation in Florida, out of college from Florida Institute of Technology, way back in the early 90s.
So, tell us how big your Tesla position is, and how did you get into it?
So today, I've actually, I have 10,000 shares, just over 10,000. And I'm keeping 5 million in cash, just over 5 million in cash right now. So I could have more, and I did have more, and I had options before too, and I made good money on options in Tesla. But I've gotten all out of options with this crazy volatility. So that's where I'm at. Basic summary is 10,000 Tesla shares and 5 million in cash, and I'd like to redeploy that in Tesla.
So since we first talked, you've seen some highs and lows, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
Well, even before we talked, back in January, there was a day when it went down $108.31 on January 26th. That's $1 million.
Yes, it is.
How'd that leave you feeling?
I've seen over $3 million days up and down. So, but yeah, the account was smaller already when it moved down over $1 million on that day. So it's a little bit gut wrenching, but once I got to the point of putting 5 million in cash, it's less stressful, just because for lack of a better term, and pardon the thing, but my FU number, my original one was like 4 million. And, I really like double that just because, taxes and other things can eat away at it. But 5 plus shares is comfortable. So I sleep well at night like that.
So when did you get into Tesla, and why Tesla so aggressively? What's different about Tesla, man?
Yeah, so I can go way back. My first experience ever with a Tesla was in like 2010 or 11. Working at Analog Devices, the head of the site here in Greensboro, North Carolina is where I'm located, and it's a site of like 300 employees. Headquarters for the company is in Wilmington, Massachusetts. But the head of the site here, or one of the main guys, he actually had a Tesla Roadster, the original one. And one day, there was like 6 or 7 of us engineers out there in the parking lot. He was showing it to everybody and talking about it. So I'd seen it then, but it didn't turn me on to it. And can this be a little bit of a story? Can I go for 5 or 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so that was my first exposure to it. And I think, it was about that time. See, I had been investing since 1994 and had never really hit it big, we'll say. I invested in Cisco, but just discipline, not sticking with things, selling out at the wrong time, stuff like that. And I'd gotten back in. I kept investing in different things. I'd watched a lot of the big players in the late '90s, before the 2000 bust, and then it was a long rebuild from then. So I've been back in the market, building my 401k, building a Roth for me and my wife. Even had a health savings account, which I hadn't started investing with yet, but I did later. So around 2011, though, I had looked at my accounts and said, you know what, things aren't going well. I'm not performing well. Everybody tells you, get a 30-year mortgage, pay the minimum, invest the rest, invest the difference, because, the difference of your disposable income, because stock market does way better than the rate on your mortgage. I called time out on myself around that time that I saw the first Tesla and said, you know what, I haven't done well, and I'm going to work to pay off my house and then reassess. So I took a year and a half and did that, changed jobs, had a contracting job, was able to actually pay the house off. I had stopped contributing to my investments, 401k, Roths, had a tiny retail account, taxable, but most was in retirement accounts. So I didn't really contribute any further to those. But then in 2013, I had changed jobs in 2012, a contracting job that was with AMD in Texas. I was in Greensboro, traveling back and forth, and it paid well, so we were able to pay off the house. And then I got an employment job where I could work from home with an old boss at a very good company, and was able to secure a very good salary, and was going to have about 60 to 70, well, ended up being 60 to 70,000 in disposable income a year. But in late 13, I decided I was I didn't want to work the rest of my life, and I knew the way to do it was in the stock market. And I knew what I'd been doing wasn't working. Basically, I decided I needed a community. So I joined. I had some friends back in the mid-90s that I played basketball with, early mornings on Saturdays at a church every Saturday, and they were members of the Motley Fool. And one of those guys had paid off his house with his gains from like iOmega and AOL back then. So I knew who the Motley Fool was, but I'd never even got a sign-on account until 6 months, like halfway through 2013. So by the end of the year, I was like, I'm ready, and I joined the Motley Fool. This is my nature. I went from 0 to 100. At their top level tier, paid $12,500 for a 5-year membership. And with that, I got a community online. There were forums and boards and an overload of information. So I quickly realized, well, soon enough, realized I've got to filter this stuff. It's not, they can make recommendations, but I've got to decide what I want to do. So I started following some of what they were doing, and pretty quickly, they had David Gardner had recommended Tesla, probably in 2013, and by the end of the next year, in 2014, I bought some shares in my wife's Roth IRA account based on their recommendations and me beginning to do research. I started going to conferences with the Motley Fool. I was kind of slow. For 15 months I didn't go, and then I was scratching my head going, I paid $12,500 and it covers these conferences. Okay, I have to buy food. Well, no, they feed you for most of it. I have to get there and, pay for a hotel. But, that's worth it. I'm going all in on this, and, I want to grow for, my retirement, and so I can do what I want to do later, or at least maybe figure out what that is sometime. So over that 5 years, I began to do research on Tesla, and I found people like um, value investor, or value analyst, which is Yamin Sadabar. We know his name now. He was on, what is it? He was on Seeking Alpha first, and I paid for his service there. But he gave great analysis of Tesla. Then I found Galileo Russell with Hyperchange TV on YouTube, and these people just really helped me to begin to see deeply into Tesla. This is probably 2016, 2017, and I just slowly began buying more and more of Tesla. I pulled up some records here on my screen. Like in 2000, by mid 2017, I was at 43% of our portfolios were in Tesla. By the end of the next year, it was about the same, but I'd increased my share count from like 372 to over 500. 550 by the end of the next year. And then by the end of the next year, we were at 837 shares, and by the end of next year, it was 1,000 shares. But what I was doing also was buying leaps, long-term options, and I also discovered, I got some good options education from the Motley Fool as well. So I began to understand options, and you can build with options what's called a synthetic long position. That's buy a call and then sell a put at the same strike price and the same expiration date, and then it moves exactly like the stock. So I had some of those positions too, and the neat thing about those is that you can actually roll them. Like if you have January 2019 or January 2020, so let's say January 2019 expirations at say $260 strike price. I had a number of those. If you buy the call and sell the put and it gets near that expiration, or just the next year comes out, you can roll it, and it ends up being a near zero cost transaction to roll it forward a year. So I did that at least once. But that's how I built my positions, putting 60 to 70,000 in, and this is across an IRA. By this time I had one IRA over at Fidelity. I had another one at Schwab with my current employer, and even though it's with the employer, I was fortunate to have employers that worked with the brokers and allowed you to have a brokerage side of your 401k, and you can move the money from the mutual fund side or whatever over to the brokerage side where you can actually buy shares. So I was doing that, and then I had an employee stock purchase plan with my employer. They gave me a 15% discount, so I would take those shares and immediately sell them when they became mine. So I'd have at least a 15% profit. Sometimes it was more, and I would immediately buy Tesla or Solar City. I had a bunch of Solar
City shares.
I had like 500 Solar City shares. I picked them up when it had dropped to around $20, which it was like $10,000 for about 500 shares. So that turned into like 55 Tesla shares, because it was like a 1 to 11 ratio when Tesla bought them. So I got some Tesla shares that way too.
So what was it about Tesla that made you say, this is the company I'm going to go so heavily into?
One thing I ran across too, I just started researching, digging, and this was outside anything the Motley Fool was telling me. I found Tony Seba's work, his Rethink X, in 2017 when he published a 70-page, it's basically a research report, but he actually published it as a book on Amazon also. I had downloaded the PDF, read like the first 30 pages in a week, and that really convinced me. I mean, it was like, I'm an engineer, and that stuff just spoke to me. It's math, it's numbers, it shows you trends. I had also begun reading like executive level books, on how to grow companies. Inside the Tornado. I should have got them off my shelf, but I have them over there. I could go get them. But I've read books on how companies change, how companies need to change to follow a secular trend in technology and things like this. And Tesla was checking all the boxes. Plus Tony Seba's work on where the future is going with batteries, with artificial intelligence, with peak oil, with trends towards ride sharing and Uber coming up and that taking off. I mean, I could just see the trends, and it was like Tesla was ticking all the boxes. And then Galileo Russell and value analyst helped me to see that Tesla was actually profitable if they would just stop growing. So in other words, they were operationally profitable all along. They were bleeding cash because they were growing, and that was the only, and they were getting slammed in the marketplace for that. So, but those two guys helped me see this, and I track revenues like crazy, and I read everything I could find on Elon Musk. The Ashley Vance biography was huge for me. I just got to know who he was, and I was like, he's an honest man. And I began sitting on every quarterly conference call and listening. And then I would, go listen to, then I'd read what other people, or watch, Galley, and then there was Rob Maurer, and there's, Stephen Mark Ryan, and but these were, these guys came along later when the stock started to move, some of them. But my conviction got deeper and deeper because I knew, for me, the number one thing in finding a stock that's going to grow is revenue growth. If they can't grow their business, you don't have a chance of growing with them. So number two is total addressable market. And the deeper I dug into Tesla, it was like, I can't get my... it's vast. I mean, just vehicles is hundreds of billions of dollars of market opportunity, market size. And that's only scratching the surface. We got, artificial intelligence, we got the robotaxis, and then you've got, AGI, artificial general intelligence with robots and all this stuff. But just the car market is huge. And I listened to Elon when he said, we're setting out to make the best car. Not the best, not a good electric car. We're setting out to make the best car. He's not competing to get electric vehicle share. He's competing to get transportation market share. And that, it all made sense to me as an engineer and a thinking person.
Well, there it is, and there you go. That's part one of the interview with José Calviño, the 10,000 share whale. It's interesting stuff. The next two parts will be coming out over about the next week. I hope you come back for those. He's got some insights from his background as a semi-chip employee, a guy who worked in, a variety of different chip fabs. There's some good stuff in there. And, of course, the whole thing is already out on Patreon, so if you want to see it now and you just can't wait, you can do that, or just hang tight, and you'll get them all pretty soon. So, what did I miss or misunderstand? Leave me all your thoughts, your comments, your brilliance, your juicy wisdom in them comments below. And as always, my friends, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I can't wait to hear from you clever robots, I guess, on the next interview.